Hello, are you ready to learn for today? So our lesson for today will be all about solving problems involving quadratic equation. But later on, we'll be having one example wherein we'll be having a rational equation that can be transformed into a quadratic equation. So in solving problems involving quadratic equation, you may use the following procedures. First, read and analyze the problem carefully. Second, identify the given and what is asked in the problem. Siyempre, kung naintindihan mo na yung problem, kailangan alam mo din kung ano yung given doon at ano yung mga magagamit mo sa problem para masagutan siya. Next, represent the unknown using algebraic expression. So, in representing algebraic expression, you can represent a letter or a variable that is the same as the first letter of the given para mas madaling tandaan. So, formulate the mathematical sentence. This will serve as your working quadratic equation. Yan. So, mamaya kapag tapos natin, syempre, represent yung mga variables natin, we have to create a quadratic equation para yun yung magiging formula natin sa pag-solve ng ating problem. Third, find the solution set or roots of the quadratic equation using any method discussed on the previous lessons. So, since we'll be solving a quadratic equation, you can use the different methods in solving quadratic equation, especially factoring and quadratic formula. So, yun yung tip ko na I think dalawa sa pinaka-useful na method sa ganitong problem solving. Next, to check, substitute the obtained roots to the working equation. So as you can see, I have here four underlined and color red capital words or capital letter words that is emphasized in each given steps or procedure. So I have here problem, equation, solution, and answer. So as we discuss each of them, on the problem part, this is where we will identify the given and what is asked on the problem. So in that part, it will also be the part wherein we'll try to represent the given into the unknowns and also identify kung paano natin magagamit yung mga algebraic expression na yon from the given to create an equation, which will be the next part of our step in the presentation later or the examples later. So equation includes a quadratic equation. So tuturuan ko kayo kung paano mag-formulate ng quadratic equation from the algebraic expression. And after that, we'll try to solve that quadratic equation using a method of solving quadratic equation. So for the examples later, I'll be just using factoring, but you could also use quadratic formula. So that is on the part of solution. And the part of answer, this is where we try to evaluate the given roots that we were able to solve para malaman natin kung sino din yung possible or hindi pwedeng maging sagot ng ating problem. There are times kasi na for example, makukuha mong root is negative but the problem says or ask for the measurement. So pag measurement kasi merong mga unit dyan na hindi pwedeng negative, especially when we are talking about length and width. So, wala naman tayong negative length and negative width. Kaya, yun yung isa sa mga bagay na i-consider natin when we evaluate the given or the roots that we were able to solve from the equation. So, yun din. Yung gagawin natin mamaya. We can also substitute these following roots just to try if they will be a possible answer for the problem. Okay, let's start with the first example. So, example number 1. The area of a room is 120 square meters and the length is 1 less than twice the width. Find the length and the width of the room. So let's pause for a while for you to understand the problem. Okay, so it's easier for us to understand it if we can try to visualize it using a diagram. So it is a room, so we can say that it is a rectangular room because it has a length and a width. So like that one, length and width. So we can also say that the length is longer than the width because although it's one less than, it is still twice the width. Diba? One less than twice the width. Kaya malamang mas mahaba dito sa length. At the same time, we have a statement from the given that says length is 1 less than twice the width. So, try natin mag-represent ng variables from the given. We can say, or we can represent L as length and W as width. So, from the given as well, we can also have this one. So, W is equal to W. We'll try to represent the length as one variable or as in terms of W or width. So, paano natin papakita sa algebraic expression yung 1 less than twice the width? So, ito, 1 less than twice the width. Paano kaya yan? So, 1 less than, always remember, that means minus 1. Kapag may word na less than kayo nakikita, minus nung naunang sinabi na number. So, magiging minus 1 yan. Then, it also mentioned twice the width. So, obviously, it's 2 times W. So, 2 times W minus 1. That will be the value of L. So, bakit natin ginawa yan? Para mamaya, ang working equation natin will only have one variable, which is W. Diba? So, meron na tayong W is equal to W and the length will be equal to 1 less than twice the width, which is represented as 2W minus 1. So, na-represent na natin yung mga variable ay yung mga unknowns into the variables length and width. We can now do the equation. So, we can still analyze the given. Ang nagamit pa lang natin na unknown dun is yung length and width. So, we can still use 120 square meters. So, from that, it says that 120 square meters is the area. So, we can recall the formula of the area, which is equal to length times width. And from the problem itself, it says that the area is equal to 120 square meters. And since that will be the area, we can say that length times width is equal to 120. Diba? Kasi diba length times width is equal to area. Area is equal to 120. Therefore, length times width is equal to 120. Now, if you can see the representation a while ago, we already represented the length in terms of the width, which is 2W minus 1. So, we can replace this L into 2W minus 1 para isang variable na lang tayo sa equation. So, yan. Pinalitan ko na siya ng 2W minus 1. Dito siya galing sa representation natin kanina. So, we can just distribute W or just expand this given equation. So, we can multiply W times 2W and W times negative 1. So, we can have now the equation. And so, we can have now the equation W times 2W is 2W squared and W times negative 1 is negative W. So, pwede yan kahit hindi na una yung monomial na W dun sa unahan ng 2W minus 1. So, that will be the product of W times 2W minus 1. And just copy my equals to 120. So, from that, pwede pa nating maayos to para mas mukhang quadratic equation kasi kung titignan nyo, meron na tayong highest degree of the exponent which is equal to 2. So we can subtract 120 for both sides or we can transfer this 120 to the left side making it negative 120 so that our quadratic equation will look like this one. 2W minus W minus 120 is equal to 0. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, minus 120 for both sides. So this will become 0 kaya siya magiging negative 120 dun sa dulo. Gets po? Okay, so since we already have the quadratic equation, we can now have our solution. So our solution will include our quadratic equation as well. So 2W minus W minus 120 is equal to 0. So dyan tayo mag-start kasi yung solution natin will just be solving this quadratic equation. Siyempre, kung titignan nyo dyan, yung variable natin is yung width. So after we're done with this solution, makukuha natin yung values ng ating or values ng width natin. So, yes, I will be doing factoring. So, nakita ko na 2 yung katabi niya nung ating quadratic term. So, kapag factoring tapos a is greater than 1, we'll try to do AC method. So, 2 times negative 120, that will be 240. So, I can simplify now the equation into W squared minus W minus 240 is equal to 0. Di ba ganyan yung ginagawa natin kapag factoring tapos yung A natin is greater than 1. So, now it's easier for us to factor. this w squared minus w minus 240. So what we can do is to think of factors of negative 240 that will be having a sum of negative 1. So the factors would be w minus 16 times w plus 15. So bakit yan? Kasi if we try to multiply negative 16 times positive 15, that will be negative 240. And if we try to add negative 16 plus positive 15, that will be equal to negative 1. So, pasok siya as factors nung ating given quadratic equation. So, from that, pwede na natin ngayong hatiin or pwede na nating ibalik yung AC na ginawa natin kanina. Di ba? Minultiply natin siya si 2, ibabalik na natin siya. So, we divide both sides by 2. Yan yung ginagawa natin kapag nag-AC tayo. So, ibabalik natin dun sa factors yung 2. So, we divide both of the factors to 2, making our factors now be equal to 16 divided by 2 is 8. Kaya siya naging W minus 8. Then, ito, hindi naman natin siya madidivide at magiging whole number. So, okay na yan, 15 over 2. So, that will be the two factors that we'll be having. So, from that, pwede na tayo mag-zero product property. Hatiin na natin sila into two equation. One will be having W minus 8 and another one will be having W plus 15. And both are equal to 0. So, dito muna tayo sa left part. So, solve natin tong equation na to. So, we can add 8 for both sides para maging W is equal to 8. Yan, addition property of equality lang. Then, ganun din sa kabila, pero instead of add, we can add a negative 15 over 2 para ito ay maging 0. Then, we will be having W is equal to negative 15 over 2. Since W represents our width, we can say our width can be 8 meters. But if you take a look at this given root, it's negative 15 over 2. Yes, it's possible na meron tayong fraction na width or measurement. Pero it's not possible that we can have a measurement that is negative. So, automatically, from solving this equation, although solution siya or root siya ng ating quadratic equation, we cannot consider this one. Kasi nga, negative siya. Wala naman tayong negative na measurement. So, as we evaluate our answers, so we can say that W is equal to 8. So we can now solve for the value of the length. So a while ago, we say that our length is equal to twice or 1 less than twice the width or 2W minus 1. So we can just replace this W or substitute it with 8. So that will be 2 times 8 minus 1, which is equal to 15. Diba? 2 times 8 is 16 minus 1 is equal to 15. So from that, we can now have our final answer wherein the width is equal to 8 meters and the length is equal to 15 meters. Gets po? Okay, let's try to have another example. So, example number 2. Mang Juan owns a rectangular lot. The perimeter of the lot is 90 meters and its area is 450 meters squared. Determine the length and the width of the rectangular lot. So, from this problem, it looks like the same as the problem before, but the difference is dito, imbes na ibigay sa atin yung relationship ng length tsaka ng width, ang binigay sa atin na given is the perimeter, which is 90 meters, and the area, which is 450 meters squared. So, by understanding the problem, we'll use these two things to solve for the length and the width of this rectangular lot. So, una, pwede natin imagine yung given problem by having the length and the width of a rectangular lot. So, dito, makita nyo, halos kapares lang siya nung kaninang diagram. Pero, the difference is, dun sa problem na binigay sa atin, hindi naman sinabi kung ano yung, or wala namang statement dun sa problem na nagsasabi kung ano yung mas mahaba, length ba or width. So, this is just a representation. So, mamaya malalaman natin kung sino yung mas mahaba, sa length ba or si width. Yan. So, for now, as we continue, we can once again represent the length and the width as the variables L and W. Yan. So, length L and W for the width. And since we're given with the perimeter, we can recall the idea of perimeter by having its formula. So, the perimeter is equal to 2 length plus 2 W. Yan yung formula natin dati ng perimeter, di ba? aside from saying just add all the sides or the value of the sides of the rectangular or the rectangle shape. So perimeter is equal to 2L plus 2W. So from that, we can also say since the given or the problem says 90 meters daw yung perimeter natin, so we can say that our perimeter is equal to 90 meters. So from that, we can understand that 2L plus 2W is equal to 90. Yan. 'Di ba? Pwede natin sabihin yan kasi nga perimeter natin yung 2L plus 2W. Since 90 yung perimeter natin, we can say that 2L plus 2W is equal to 90. So, if you take a look at each term, 2L, 2W, and 90, all of them can be divided by 2. So, to furtherly simplify this given representation, we can divide all of them by 2. So 2L divided by 2, 2W divided by 2, and 90 divided by 2. So the resulting will be equal to L plus W is equal to 45, di ba? Yung 2L tsaka 2W, pag dinivide mo yan sa 2, magiging L and W na lang sila. Then 90 divided by 2 is equal to 45. So we'll now have one equation that can be used later as we formulate our quadratic equation. So another given from the problem is the area. So the area is once again equal to length times the width. So yan, L times W. And according to the problem, our area is equal to 450 meters squared. So ayan siya. Area is equal to 450 meters squared. So we can say that length times the width is equal to 450. Yan, another equation that can be used later in the formulation of our quadratic equation. So, ayan na. May representation na tayo ng ng perimeter at saka ng area. So, now we can now use it to formulate the equation. So, unang gagamitin ko to formulate our quadratic equation is the perimeter's representation, which is L plus W is equal to 45. Although, this is only half of the perimeter kasi nga, dinivide natin sila sa 2. So, from that, ang pwede natin gawin dito kasi katulad nung kanina, isang variable lang yung dapat nandun sa equation. So, we will once again represent the length in terms of W. So, ang gagawin ko is I will try to um, transpose that W to the right side or add negative W for both sides, making it L is equal to 45 minus W. Yan. So, parang nilipat lang since positive siya. So, naging negative siya dito. So, ayan yung gagamitin natin. L is equal to 45 minus W. So, we will now have a representation of the length in terms of the width W. And another thing that we'll be using is, ayun, galing siya dun sa baba. The area of the lot, which is 450. That is represented as well in terms of L and W. So, length times width is equal to 450. So, from that, katulad ng ginawa natin sa example number 1, para maging isang variable na lang yung equation natin, papalitan natin tong L natin dun sa ginawa nating equation kanina or na-derive natin dun sa perimeter. So, since length is equal to 45 minus W, we can replace this L into 45 minus W, making now our equation be 45 minus W times W is equal to 450. So, copy lang natin to. So, saan galing tong length natin na pinalitan ng 45 minus W? Dito. Yan, dyan sa equation na yan na nagawa natin kanina. So, for this one, nakita na natin na, ayan, pwede na ulit tayo mag-expand para maging quadratic equation to. So, we can multiply that W to that 45 and this W to negative W, making now our equation B equal to, yan, ayusin lang natin ulit to, yan, W. So, making our equation be equal to W times 45, that will be 45W, and W times negative W is negative W squared. So, kung titignan nyo, ito ay isang quadratic equation na. Pero ayusin natin to into a standard form para mas madaling i-factor mamaya. So, una natin gagawin is we will try to interchange the position of 45W and W squared. Yan, or negative W squared. So, pinagpalit natin siya. So, ganyan yung itsura. So, magkabaligtad lang. Para yung quadratic term natin nandun na siya sa unahan. Then, linear term na yung kasunod niya. So, unti-unti natin 'tong gagawing mukhang quadratic equation in standard form. So, next that we'll be doing is we can subtract 400 or add negative 450 for both sides as we do addition property of equality. So, dito wala naman siyang similar term pero dito ito ay magiging 0. So, the equation will now look like a negative w squared plus 45w minus 450 is equal to 0. So, kung titingnan nyo, pwede na yan as a quadratic equation. Pero para mas maganda yung tsura, gawin natin positive yung a natin. Instead of negative 1, we can divide all of them by negative 1. So, each of the term can be divided into negative 1, making their signs in reverse. So, yan. Yung negative w squared will be positive. Itong plus or positive 45 magiging negative. Then, itong negative 450 magiging plus yan mamaya. Then, 0 divided by negative 1 will still be 0. So, now our equation will be positive w squared minus 45w plus 450. So, kung titignan nyo, nagbago na yung mga signs nila. So, ito naging positive na, ito naging subtraction, then ito naging addition na. So, mas maganda yung equation natin kapag nakaganyan and standard form. So, since we already have the standard form of the quadratic equation, we can now do the solution by solving this quadratic equation and getting the value of w. So, to start, let's have our quadratic equation, w squared minus 45w plus 450. Yan, we can go directly with factoring because a is equal to 1. Yan, 1 naman siya. So, diretso na tayo sa factoring. So, iisip ka ng dalawang number pag pinag-multiply mo ay 450 or positive 450. Then, pag pinag-add mo ay negative 45. So, kung nahihirapan kayo i-factor to, you can also do quadratic formula. Yan. Pwede mo na ngayon gawing a is equal to 1, b is equal to negative 45, and c is equal to 450. Yan. Pero ako, ang gagawin ko is factoring. So, I have my factors as w minus 30 and w minus 15 because if we try to multiply negative 30 times negative 15, that will be equal to positive 450. Pag inad naman natin silang dalawa, ang sagot naman ay negative 45. So, tama yung factors natin. So, from that, we can already divide this into two equation using zero product property. We equate negative w minus 30 is equal to 0 and w minus 15 is also equal to 0. So, solve mo muna natin to nasa left side. We can add 30 for both side, making this equal to 0. So, our equation will now have an answer or the root that is equal to 30. So, w is equal to 30. On the other side, we can add also 15 for both sides. So, this one will be equal to 0. Then, our answer will now be equal to 15. So, as you can see, 30 and 15 are both positive numbers. That means pwede silang value ng ating width. Yan nga, sabi, both 30 and 15 can be the value of the width. Kasi wala naman restriction if it is positive. So, pwede pa lang ang width natin ay 30 and pwede naman ang width natin is 15. So, ano yung magiging answer natin? So, tingnan natin kung paano natin i-evaluate. So, first, we can say that if W is equal to 30, we can solve for the length. So, balikan natin, length is equal to 45. Ito, yung kanina. 45 minus W. So, 45, since our width is 30 for this part, we can subtract 45 minus 30. That will be equal to 15. So, kapag ang width natin ay 30, ang length natin ay 15. Since the width can also be equal to 15, pwede rin nating i-substitute yon. So, we can also have 45 minus W for the value of the length. So, 45 minus 15, that will be equal to 30. So, ano yung dalawang possible set of answers natin? So, ayan. If the width will be equal to 30, the length is equal to 15. Pero pwede ring sagot is if the width is equal to 15 meters, the length is equal to 30. So, pwede silang mag-reverse. Kaya pala kanina, hindi natin ma-identify kung ano yung mas mahaba, length ba or width. Kasi, dalawa pala yung possible set of answers. Yung isa ay mas mahaba yung width, yung isa ay pwedeng mas mahaba yung length. Okay, let's have this third example and last. So example number 3. So as we read, two factories can produce a shipment of face masks in 6 hours. Working alone, the slower factory would take 9 hours longer than the faster factory to do the job. How many hours would it take each factory working alone to do the job? So yan. Try natin i-analyze yung problem. So yes, we have two factories, the faster and the slower factory. Yan, but working together, they can finish producing the face mask in 6 hours. But working alone, ito yung sinabi, the slower factory would take 9 hours longer. So, mas matagal nga naman siya. Siyempre, slower factory siya eh. 9 hours longer than the faster factory to do the job. Yan. So, yan yung isang mga importanteng details dun sa problem natin. Then, we are asked to find the individual time in finishing if the factories works alone. Yan. So, ito lang yung clue natin. Yung slower factory, mas matagal siya ng 9 hours compared dun sa faster factory. Then, if they work together, they can finish the job in 6 hours. So, yan yung mga clue natin dun sa problem. So, as we continue, we can first let a variable for the faster and the slower factory as we introduce their time. So, yan. Pwede natin pag-compare yan. So, we can represent the time of the faster factory, the time alone, as t. Yan. So, represent t hours. Yan. We represent it as t. Then, since ang sabi dito sa problem is yung slower factory daw, it would take 9 hours longer than the faster factory. So, may plus 9 tayo. Yan. Take note nyo yung mga problem ha. Kapag less than yan, syempre minus 9 yon. Pero since it's longer than, it's plus 9. So, instead of t, we can just represent the slower factory's time alone, which is t plus 9. Yan. So, we already have the time for each factory. Faster factory, we represent it as t. And the slower factory, we represent it as t plus 9. Yan. So, yan yung mga time nila alone in doing or producing the face mask. Yan. So, formula. So, this will be the formula for our problem. If you will be encountering work problems the same as this one, yan, usually naman ganito lang yung magiging format niyan. Nagbabago-bago lang yung setting. Minsan tao, minsan painting a job or paint job yung mga trabaho. Pero it will all fall with this formula. So, itong formula na to, malamang na-encounter nyo na rin to nung grade 8. So, we have 1 over t sub a plus 1 over t sub b plus 1 over t sub t. So, para mas maintindihan, ito yung ibig sabihin. Yung t sub a daw is yung time nila for object A. So, object A natin dito siguro yung faster factory. Then, yung time naman daw ng object B can be represented as this t sub b. Or siguro pwede nating ilagay dyan yung slower factory, yung time. So, ito yung time nila eh. Then, t sub t is the time for A and B together. So, the time for A and B working together. So, pwede nating ilagay dun mamaya si 6. Di ba? So, analyze pa natin. We can replace t sub A and t sub B as for the time, for the faster and the slower factory. So, yan. Lagay na natin siya dun sa formula. So, 1 over t sub A and 1 over t sub B could be the time for the faster and the time for the slower. So, ilalagay natin ngayon yung time nung faster dito sa unahan, 1 over t sub F, and dun yung slower time or slower factory's time, lalagay natin dito sa 1 over t sub S. So, by that, yan, ang ilalagay naman natin dun sa t sub t is their time together in working or producing together the face mask. So, yun yung ilalagay natin dun is yung 6 hours. So, from that, ang lalabas na equation natin is 1 over t plus 1 over t plus 9 is equal to 1 over 6. Ito yung time ng faster factory working alone. Ito naman yung time ng slower factory working alone. At ito naman yung time nila working together. So, yan. From the formula, nagkaroon tayo ngayon ng isang rational equation that can be transformed into a quadratic equation later. So, yan. Meron na tayong working equation. Pwede na tayo gumawa ng quadratic equation. So, kasi Doon sa equation part, although ito na ay isang rational equation, gagawa pa rin tayo ng isang quadratic equation. So, anong gagawin natin quadratic equation? Yung rational equation natin na nakuha dito sa kanina. So, from that, paano natin to ita-transform into a quadratic equation? So, kailangan, kung naaalala nyo pa, in solving equations that can be transformed to quadratic equation, itong equation na sample natin para matanggal natin yung mga denominators diyan. Ang ginawa natin dun sa example natin is we try to get the LCD. And our example only includes the LCD being multiplied. O, yung mga product lang ng mga denominators nila. Yun lang naman yung binigay ko sa example. Kaya yung mga problems natin, ganun din yung mga LCD nila. Yung product lang ng denominator. So from this, we have the denominators t plus 9, and 6. So our LCD is 6t times t plus 9. So yan yung LCD natin. Then paano natin gagamitin tong LCD in reducing this equation into a quadratic equation? First, we will once again have this equation. So, ang gagawin natin dyan, we will multiply each of the given term to the LCD. So, from that, pwede na tayong mag-simplify. Yan. So, since the denominator has t and this has t, so pwede natin silang i-divide. So, t divided by t is equal to 1. So, pwede natin matanggal yan mamaya. Then, dito naman, so this is t plus 9. So, we can simplify them. Parehas na silang may t plus 9. Therefore, this will be equal to 1 and this will be equal to 1. Simplified na siya. Then, for the right side of the equation, the denominator and the LCD both has 6. So, we can divide 6 divided by 6. Therefore, they will be both equal to 1. Now, to simplify, kung mapapansin natin, ang natira dito ay 1 at ang natira dito ay 6 tsaka t plus 9. So, dito naman ay 1 tsaka 6t. Dito naman ay 1 tsaka t times t plus 9. So, from that, we can multiply 1 times 6 times t plus 9, then 1 times 6 times t, then 1 times t plus 9 represented by this. Yan. So, kung titingnan nyo, tinanggalan natin yung 1 kasi yun lang din naman yung magiging product nila. So, 6 times t plus 9, ito yan. That is coming from that equation. Then, dito naman is 60. Ito siya. Then 1 times 60 is 60 lang din naman. Then dito is 1 times t plus 9 is t times t plus 9. So ito na yung magiging working equation natin. Ang kagandahan dyan, hindi na siya rational. So mas madali na siyang isolve mamaya. But before that, we can distribute the following. So distribute muna natin sila. So itong 6, we have to multiply it with t. And we also have to multiply it with 9. Dito naman, ayan, 60 lang siya. Dito naman, distribute din natin. T times t, tsaka t times 9. So, if you multiply 6 times t, that will be 60. 6 times 9 is, I think, 54. Then, t times t is t squared. Then, t times 9 is 90. So, we'll now have this equation. Diba? 60 plus 54 plus 60 is equal to t squared plus 9. So, from here, we can combine like terms muna para mas ma-simplify pa natin yung equation. So, I think 60 is similar term with positive 60. So, we can add 60 plus 60 making it 12t. So, our equation, then copy lang natin yung iba. So, magiging 12t plus 54 is equal to t squared plus 90. So, ano yung pwede natin gawin dyan? Isang quadratic equation na yan. Pero para mas gawin natin siyang standard form, para pwede natin gawin yung factoring or quadratic formula later. So, ang susunod kong gagawin is, I can transfer all of them on the right side para dito na positive na yung t-squared ko. So, I will subtract 12t and I will subtract 54 from the left side and also the right side of the equation. Ayan. So, para ito ay maging 0. Ito ay maging 0. Then, we can add 9 plus negative 12. I think that will be negative 3t. Then, copy lang natin to kasi wala naman siyang similar term. Making our equation now be equal to 0 is equal to t squared minus 3t minus 54. So, yan na. So, pwede nating pagbaliktarin yan, gawin nating t squared minus 3t minus 54. Kasi meron naman tayong tinatawag na reflexive property of equality, kaya pwede silang ganito yung itsura. So, mas maganda at mas mukhang standard form yung ating equation. We have t squared minus 3t minus 54 is equal to 0. And this will now be our working quadratic equation that can be used on the solution part. So, yan. Labas lang ulit natin si t squared minus 3t minus 54. Ayan na yung ating quadratic equation. Then, we'll try to have factoring to solve for the roots. Pero, once again, pwede kayong gumamit ng quadratic formula. So, ayan na yung A nyo. A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is equal to negative 4. Yan. Pares pa rin naman yung sagot na makukuha ninyo. So, ako, gamit ako ng factoring. So, hanap ako ng dalawang numbers na ipag-multiply, ang sagot ay negative 54 pag inad is negative 3. And that will be negative 9 and positive 6. So once again, negative 9 times positive 6 is negative 54. Negative 9 plus 6 is equal to negative 3. So ayan yung factors natin. So from that, we can already divide them using zero product property. We have t minus 9 is equal to 0 and t plus 6 is equal to 0 as we have these two given equation. So, solve ko muna dito sa left side. We can add 9 for both sides. So, we'll be having t is equal to 9 kasi ito ay magiging 0 na. Yan. So, ang time natin will be equal to 9. Ito naman, subtract ako ng 6 for both sides. So, this will be equal to 0. Then, our time will be equal to negative 6. But, as you can see, we cannot have a time that is negative, 'di ba? If you think wala naman tayong ilang oras ka, hindi naman sinasabing negative 6 hours. Wala namang ganong bagay, 'di ba? So we cannot another restriction is having a time that is negative. So hindi tayo pwede magkaroon ng time na negative. So from that part pa lang, pwede na natin na-exclude si negative 6 as a part of the answer from the problem kahit na lumabas yan as a solution. So gets po? Yan. So, ano na ngayon yung magiging sagot natin? T is equal to 9. Pero kaninong time ba yan? Kay slower ba o kay faster factory? So, evaluate natin siya using the answers or using this part, answer part. So, una, we know that T is equal to 9 and that is for the faster factory. And T plus 9 and that is for the slower factory. Yung t natin is sa faster and yung t plus 9 sa slower. So, yung t pala na yun na na-solve natin is para dun sa faster factory. And solve natin yung sa slower factory, mag-add lang tayo ng another 9 kasi nga sabi dyan, di ba? 9 hours longer pa si slower factory. So, t plus 9, since 9 yung t natin, that will be 9 plus 9 which is equal to 18. So, ang final answer natin ngayon ay 9 hours dun sa t is equal to 9 and then 18 hours dun sa t plus 9. So, faster factory, 9 hours. Slower factory, 18 hours. Then, that is their time working alone or doing or producing the shipment of the face mask alone. Gets po? I hope you understand the lesson for today. Until next time, bye!